Welcome, everyone. My name is Arisca. Today, together with the team that we've been working on this topic within the airport room, we'll be talking a little bit about asset lifecycle management at airports. If you've joined our sessions before the last couple of years, you probably know that our topic was primarily focused on more of the technical part of the project that we've been working on. And today we want to kind of take a step back and really discuss with you guys why we're doing this project and what we want to reach by the end of the airport entities project and how we can move forward. So that's why the title is a little bit different: Asset Lifecycle Management at Airports, digitalizing the aviation industry by the use of open standards. Little introduction of who have been working on this presentation. I see Mike is kind of cut off of the slide. Apologize for that. So within buildingSMART, my name is Arisca Droog. My colleague Maya, I think she just said that she can that it's working again, so she can introduce herself in a second. Another person who's helped us with this presentation is Carl Fitzpatrick from Auckland Airport. He cannot join, one, because of the time difference. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, in Auckland right now, and he was unable to travel here, but he has been a huge asset for this presentation. Again, my name is Arisca Droog. I'm from Schiphol Airport, Amsterdam. I am an information manager and a data engineer, a little bit of everything, primarily focusing on information management at the airport for the Department Asset Management. Gerard?
Yes, my name is Gerard van der Veer. I'm from NACO, a RHD subsidiary. We are an airport consultant. In that aspect, I'm an architect. I design airports, so I like to share what we have done up so far in a number of positions. And with me, my colleague, Mike dos Santos Freitas, he's our BIM manager. Together, we went on this journey for more than 10 years, and we achieved what we will show later on. And the last one,
comes to the front. My name is Christoph Eichler. I'm responsible for the asset information management in Vienna Airport, and we also had actually a small business to handle other facilities outside the airport for other contractors, because it seems that the experience of an operator is more worth than the experience of consultants. So this is getting more and more important also on the market. So that's my role, and I'm being proud to be part of it.
Yeah.
Maya, can you try to say something and introduce yourself?
Hello.
There she is.
Yes, you can hear me. Great. I will open my camera as well. Hi, hello. So I'm Maya Tryfona. I also am a colleague of Arisca, who work as a data engineer at Schiphol Airport at the asset management department. I'm mainly working on the design and update of our data model for asset management with the use of linked data. Since 2017, I've been a member of the steering committee of the airport room, and have been working in the BIM and GIS project, and also in 2020 in the airport entities project. And I'm also very proud of being part of buildingSMART.
Thank you.
So I'll kick off. When we started discussing this summit within the airport steering committee, we revitalized or rethought what we really are doing, why we are doing this. So maybe you can click through it and you can see our line of thinking. Because what you see at the moment in the entire industry, there are limited resources on all kinds of aspects, on money, on people, but also on natural resources. So we have to keep, yesterday everyone saw the presentations about sustainability. Airports are really part of that. So although it's 1.9% what I heard yesterday, and therefore airports itself are even less, but still we have to look to bring a good future. On the other hand, what we have, how we can do that, and that's also yesterday a talk that we have to know on procedures, but also on blocks, on elements. So we have to be aware what is where and how did we get there. And if we know where it is, we also have to collaborate. That's what the magic word, of course, but we have to prove that we can collaborate. And the presentation for you today is one of the showcase that we really are collaborating. This is an airport owner, but also consultants, and there are other people we have made this presentation throughout the day. And then you can see it is something we have to commit, and we have to do it all together. And the open BIM is, of course, a very important thing. Lifecycle, it is, and then you usually see, when you see the images about where are we focusing on, it's usually on construction or it is on design. But to be honest, the 40 or 50 years later on are more determining what our costs are, how is our position within nature, things like that. So that means we have to look at the life cycle. We use a common language, and that's not English, or it can be anything, but and even my voice starts to change for that. But we really have to have machine readable languages so we can communicate all together. That's a very important thing. And if we can communicate, we have to do it on a right way, a standard way, how we communicate and about what we communicate. And therefore the open BIM, it enables us to do so. And what you can see through the day is that, especially when we transfer information from one to the other, we need to be focused how we do that. And we must procedure-wise be aware what we're doing at that time. So the handover period is a very good, and the last one is that, and therefore we as airport consultants chose to use IFC, because that gives us the opportunity to have a translation of what we design, and we bring it to the next stage to contractors, but also our clients, and see it in the future. That's the why. What do we want to do? But it's also the what. What is an airport? So what we have done is look at the airport. Why are they so specific? That we have an airport room. That's quite a thing. So there must be something special, especially because it's a multimodal hub. There are a lot of modalities coming together over there. So that means you have a lot of stakeholders. And what is also particular about airports, that usually, not always, but usually the owner is also the operator. So that means they have direct link with what they do. They have real benefit from what they do. So that means that they are sitting on top of the project. They are, and we are, and as you all know, the airport industry is quite well organized. A number of owners are brought together, but also governments and users, ICAO, IATA, they all at ICA, the ICA, but they are very good organized. So that means they know what they want to do their operations and to have their assets. I think you can click them all through it and then walk through it. It also deals about a lot of money. That means a lot of important things. There are, as we already said, multidisciplines. The entire discipline world is there. There are architects, structural engineers, civil engineers, but of course also the financial guys. So there are a lot of people involved, and that means there are a lot of stakeholders, because when you look at an airport, there are operations, but there are the commercial parts, and there's quite something. And it is international, so it is crossing borders. So everyone in one country is related to the other country. You can see, for example, the security part, the security legislation is all around the world. So that's a very complicated and interesting thing. And the other thing, what is, of course, very important, is it's open 24 hours, 24/7, as they call it, 365 days a week, a year. So that means quite some effort for the assets.
So taking all of that into consideration, I kind of was like thinking for this part of the presentation, thinking of airports, open standard, and really to focus asset lifecycle management, and how to optimize our lifecycle management, information management throughout the entire life cycle. So all stakeholders involved, like Gerard just said, from design to operate or construction to maintaining, and really looking at the data and information itself. So I just got some high over points that I wanted to mention. The first one is that information needs are covered throughout the entire life cycle. So we need to, as an asset owner, together with all of our stakeholders, define what information needs are needed for each stage of its life cycle. All parties involved are responsible for reliable asset information throughout the entire asset lifecycle. So it's all those different parties need to start working together, the collaboration, in order to optimize asset lifecycle management. So what I've noticed from the client perspective is when I work with all of my different stakeholders, is that they're only focused on their parts of the lifecycle. They're not really thinking about the party that's coming after that needs to work with the information, or what is needed at the front again when they start their part of the present or of their work. So we need to get everyone involved in order to get reliable asset information. And the information needs to be transparent and accessible. So we need to be able to access it to at all times, so we can have better collaborative workflows. Looking a little bit more at the information and the data that is needed, is that we need to focus more on the asset information to be more structured and more object-oriented. So what I'm hearing a lot is that we're primarily looking at the data from a software perspective and not so much from the object itself. So I really want to look at the object, our assets, and define what we need from our assets, whether it's geometry, whether it's properties or information products as in documents, in order to really optimize, again, the asset lifecycle management. And therefore, we need standardized processes that are inclusive for all stakeholders involved. So it needs to be work for everyone. They all need to be able to just start their part of the life cycle and keep moving instead of constantly being delayed or. And then the asset owner needs to have timely access to all data that is needed for optimal asset management. So right now, a lot of times when project starts, the asset owner does not see their data until the end of the project. It needs to be more accessible whenever they need it. They need to be able to access it for several reasons. And so what we need to do is disconnect the data from the system so that we have a greater reuse of data. And again, we can access it easier and faster. And this is quite the challenge still from what I'm noticing at airports from a client perspective. And last but not least, we have to make use of automated solutions. And I guess that's why we are here, to be working on those solutions so that we can minimize manual labor and optimize asset lifecycle management and involve all of our stakeholders in that process.
And this is what I said already, and we can talk through all the letters, but what we need to have in our hearts, in our ways, that we have to look in the asset life cycle. That's the important thing. Just not only, we as architects should not only look at the design or the construction of our design, but it has to go on further. The entire life cycle will be the solution of a lot of problems by knowing what's there. So therefore we advocate very much, take care of the asset life cycle, and that will be changing our way of working. So decisions made upfront in the project, also by the client, asking them what they really want, but also by the architects and the construction companies, that they have to bear in mind that this asset will last for 40 or 50 years. There the real money gets involved, the real implication on nature or whatsoever. So the asset life cycle is a very important one. And what do we have up so far? We started this journey quite some years ago, and at a certain point we were lucky that our client Schiphol, in this case we are working all around the globe, but in this depth we work with Schiphol quite often. Then we talked about the information. How do we share? How do we design? So in time, our design process and the information process that we had share with ourselves, with the clients, with all the other engineers, it changed. And at a certain point, the IFC came around. And it's really like that. And the first time I thought this is a 3D PDF. And I'm not quite sure if you're all similar in that thought. The first time you think it's a copy of a 3D environment where I can look. But then the real essence of IFC came across. That is that you don't transfer only the geometry, but you also the information. And that information starts to gain importance. It's even, I think, although I am always thinking about spaces and things like that, I think the information, that's what it really is about. So therefore, and what do we have at the moment? We have the IFC schema, and it goes up and up and up. But there's also, and that's something we want to connect to heavily, is that the data dictionary. So it defines what kind of information is required per stage, per entity, per element. So that means that we talked about the standardization of process, but also talked about the standardization of information. So we need to be aware what kind of information do we share, and the data dictionary helps us. So it's it's something outside. For us, we work in Revit. That's outside Revit, so it means it is open. It's open for us, so for everyone, and therefore we can connect it to Revit, and therefore it's very important. Later on, we will talk about the airport domain. Because we are, as the airport domain, are looking at particular elements within airports which aren't covered by either the IFC schema or the data dictionary, the buildingSMART data dictionary. So we try to invent it ourselves. But later on, that is at the end of the day, we will go into deep to that, and I can assure you that's real deep if you see that. And then the last thing is that the data dictionary also provides us the opportunity to connect with all others, not only with the client, but also others, classification methods. But also, as you can see, the International Aviation Organization can streamline or can determine their information requirement during the entire process. So by having a data dictionary, we see it as an opportunity to connect all international organizations with our design process, but also the construction process and the operational process. So this helps us, and I won't tell you a secret that we as NARCO also are looking if we are possible for our special needs to do it. But we don't come back to that. Arisca, back to you.
So the airport room, welcome, that's where we are. This is literally from the website, so it's nothing new, but I just kind of wanted to focus back on, so what are we doing here? Why are we getting together every week from the working group and every month with the whole steering committee? And it's really to focus on developing and deploying open digital standards for the aviation industry. By working together, we really, basically everything that we just said, want to work together to accomplish that. So that's really our mission of the airport room. And so together with the working group, so the people that are presenting today, we also kind of looked at what a good value proposition would be for the airport room. And that's, Carl actually came up with this, and that is to enable airports to capitalize on the digitalization of the building environment. So it's not really focused, again, on the airport entities project. That's something that we'll talk about in the third session. But take a step back and really, what do we want to accomplish with each other? So how is the airport entities project going to lead to other projects? I know Freitas here, he's working on facility management. How can we eventually help other projects by looking at the aviation industry? If you don't agree with this, let us know and we can change it. But this is something that the working group came up with.
So problem and opportunity. So what's actually the big problem of airports? Actually, the problem of airports is they have very, very high equipped buildings with a lot of changes during the whole year, because there were changes in security specifications and so on all the time. And all of these changes in airports and all of the complexity in behind makes it very complicated to deal with all the information about the airport. There's actually no way to have control about the airport if you only have 2D drawings, for example. There's no way to deal with the airport if you only have lists or databases. You need to have the georeference context of everything. You need to know where it is, what it is, the semantic of the thing, what it is, and how to describe the thing. And actually, because airports are very unique buildings or unique assets, there is not a common data structure from somewhere else to use to describe the buildings. And for that reason, we identified the biggest problem there is actually we have no language to describe the assets, the content of the assets inside airports. And because everyone in the airports is looking for something like this, everyone started to create own personally classification systems, and exchanging informations with individual classification systems to others is really, really heavy work, because you need to translate. We start at the beginning from the entity project, for example, to exchange how we call it a passenger bridge. And it seems everyone call it in a different way. And big letters, small letters, and so on and so on. So this doesn't make it unique, and this doesn't make it very, very hard to cooperate together. And the biggest problem there is actually that airports are international working facilities, so we have everything in a common language. So for that reason, our biggest problem was looking for a common language, but how to do it. Next slide or next stage, please. So the opportunity actually is for us to create together a common language, a common addition to the existing IFC scheme. Maybe there is something in behind why we are using IFC for that, because as already mentioned, facilities in the airports works for 20, 30, 50 years. They got rebuilt all the time, but they have a very long life cycle. And all the slides today with life cycle of the building were completely wrong. We mentioned it, or we analyzed in the morning, because operation stage is much longer on the pictures as short on the pictures. So this means usually the operation stage is a very, very long time, and you can't trust in native file formats at that time, because you don't know how the software ventures exist during the whole life cycle of buildings. So that's a very, very important reason for us to go to, or to trust an open file format, because this is actually the only possibility for us to have the information kept at the owner's side for a very, very long time. And so this was the reason for us to decide we want to trust an IFC. And we also understand, actually, not everyone is interested in airport-specific extensions in the IFC scheme, because not everyone is operating an airport. So for that reason, we also understand, okay, everything we actually develop should be something like a dynamic extension. Dynamic because a lot of things changed in the airport all the time. There is new technology all around, all the time, and so on. So we have to get a dynamic extension, but we have to depend on the core of IFC, because this is the only one which is really stable for a very, very, very long term. And when we develop an extension like this, we need to provide this in an open way that everyone can implement this as well. Very flexible in many different solutions. So, for example, yesterday we have many discussions already about the buildingSMART data dictionary, and the core setting there is very, very good to have something like an international-based property server to exchange extensions. But the second question for us is as well, in addition to that, how to connect this PSDD with applications. So we think everything from the big picture, but also to the small picture, because this depends together, and this is very important. So what we are looking for actually is to collect all the airport-specific requirements, because this is the first step for us, collecting requirements to understand the needs from us as an airport, and also to articulate to others what is our need, as we do it by now. What is our need and what are the conclusions about? But there is more. When we're talking about data requirements, it's not only what kind of data or what substitution of data I have to deliver, and what are the data deliveries and so on. It's also about the supply chain, because when you're talking about digitized models of real assets, you not only have building information, you have product information, you have also building control information. In the airport world, we have a lot of geospatial information, which is also a very important context of airports. So all of these things need to put together. And this is maybe something which is also extremely unique of airports, that we have a lot of different public transport systems who are connected to the airport, but we have also a huge context of the landscape all around the airport, because airplanes need a lot of space for departure and to arrive and so on. And this is always connected to an airport. And this is something we need to have here in mind when we think about it. And again, PSDD is the right answer for us to manage the extensions of IFC. So we have a lot of ideas of how to use that, but it's also not something we can decide isolated, because we also need to think what's going on in the other rooms, for example, product room, railway room, and so on. Because also, again, they're thinking about things we always have also in the airports, so we need to connect it with them all the time. That's by the way, the reason we have this shared session this year, in this summit, to get more connected to the other rooms, because this context is very important for us.
And then to finish off this part of the presentation is to kind of give you guys an idea of who is all part of the Airport Room Steering Committee. And what I love about this group of people is that besides it's worldwide, like there's people from literally all over the world involved, it's also people from different disciplines. So we have asset owners, we have design parties involved, we have contract parties in this steering committee. Basically anyone that works with or for airports are involved in the steering committee. So that leads to a lot of interesting discussions when we meet once a month, I think, once or twice a month, with this whole group of people. And I think that's really, these are the people that are making it possible to move forward within the aviation industry. So big thanks to everyone that is mentioned here. And if I'm forgetting someone, I apologize. I looked at the email of the invitation and all the names that were in there.
And maybe also important, these are not only airport owners or airport operators. There are also designers,
Yes.
engineers, and so on. So it's a huge bunch of different stakeholders in an airport system. And this is really important for us as well, because there are many different views to the problems, and we need all of these different understandings to get the complete picture out. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you just added it this morning.
So a really important thing is actually, as mentioned, how to combine all these different systems from an airport in one IT landscape. And because, as mentioned as well, airports have a very long life cycle. Usually they operate since 60, 70 years or so. So they have old facilities, they have new facilities, but they have also old software, new software, and they need to grow up with the possibilities, but they need also to handle old components in the IT landscape. So something we discuss a lot of times already is how to implement or how to change your IT environment, because you want to implement, for example, BIM possibilities or also model-driven data facility management systems. So this is something really, really complicated inside airports, because you can't replace everything by a new system. You need to integrate new components in an existing system. And this is something really, really strange, actually, because it's not only about technology, it's also about behaviors from people who actually own systems in the old environment. You need to deal with that as well. So from time to time, we also psychologists inside our operation to care about that as well. But the problem here is actually when we saw a typical landscape, how a new digitized project runs in an airport. There are different components you need to be attentive about, but actually the problem is here that some things inside a structure like this must keep very stable for a long time. Some things are more flexible. So maybe this is something we explain in the next slide later on, but here is something very important to say actually, that when we have something in the operational stage and we're going to the something in the design and the construction stage, and we are going in the operational stage, we have a very, very important switch what's happening there. During construction and design, we have usually 5 to 8 years for big projects. But inside the operational stage, we have here usually 40, 30, 50 years. So this is what I mentioned. This is the wrong scale, completely wrong scale, this mnemonic, because usually it looks like this. You have design and construction. Oh, it doesn't work. Nobody uses these things anymore. Oh, okay. You have design and construction. Maybe this is something like this, 8 years, and then you have operation. And this is a huge, huge difference, because in this time here, you can't change anything you want. You can't make tries here. Everything needs to work. As you mentioned, the airport has to work the whole year, 24 hours a day, and you have to be sure that if an airplane and so on is coming on, the passengers need to get moved through the airport, and everything has to still work for security reasons and so on and so on. And this has to be done here the whole time. This has to be stable here the whole time. And for that reason, we can't change something very, very fast. And next slide, please. For this reason, we say, okay, if you try to think about new stuff to how to operate things with digitized project structures, how to work with BIM and so on. We have more flexibility here in planning, construction, and so on. But next slide, please. When we are going to operation, we are not that flexible. We need to think. We can't replace things, as mentioned. We need to think how to integrate, how to deal with old conditions and so on. This is something we talk about a lot because it's a little bit something which keeps us smaller than we would like to do. But it's also important because this is not something really special about airports. It's maybe something about every asset owner, even hospitals, railway stations, office buildings, and so on. Everyone has the same problem actually, but we need to care about that. Next slide, please. And our solution actually, how to deal with that, is usually that we start to analyze current processes inside our whole companies, inside the whole airports. Usually because of a really high standardized procedure setting in the airports. A lot of procedures inside the airports, doesn't matter they are in Europe or in New Zealand or in Asia and so on, they have usually more or less the same processes in behind. There are some details in difference, but the basic thing is more or less the same because they have to work on the same thing. So we could identify usually processes we can trust on, but we can identify in these processes also things they have to get changed or they are possible to change. So we have a comparison of existing processes and we can create modified processes for the future. And in parallel, we need also very detailed IT landscapes to know exactly what kind of software is in use, what are the interfaces between these softwares, and how the data is actually, how the data in these different software solutions actually is designed. Because this is always a very important thing, especially if you talk about, for example, ERP systems. They have usually a lot of information already about facilities, but they are not usually in the same way structured than you have it already in BIM models. So you need to deal with that as well. They are not that high dense as BIM models, because if they were that high dense, we don't need BIM, to be honest. So for that reason, you need to deal with that. You need to have solutions for that. And the next step is as well, when you place new things inside the landscape, inside the whole ecosystem in an airport, you need to be aware that the old solutions keep existed. Because everything which was done in the old systems for the last 30 years or so needs to get stored, but maybe you need to use it again for other stuff. For example, if you have a construction site and you do site monitoring and you're monitoring a lot of problems, and 25 years later there is a problem in the construction, you need to look for the site monitoring. What's there? What's going on there? Are there problems at this time, or is everything normal at this time, or was anything normal at this time, and so on and so on. So this is very important to know. We can't replace things. We need to keep them stored, and we need to have a solution that everything is integrated from the olden times, but also from the new times. This is an important factor there. Okay.
So, all in all, you've heard us say asset lifecycle management a lot, because we feel like that should really be the focus of the high over picture. To reach that goal, we want to use open standards as much as possible. But it also means, besides what Christoph was just saying, the changes in your environment, in your digital environment, it also means a lot of changes to your organization because of all the stakeholders involved. So it's very important to include them as well, share your ideas of open standards throughout the whole life cycle in order to make it happen. Because if we don't do that, it's nice that there's a lot of technical people here working on technical solutions, but it needs to work within your organization as well. So I think that's actually the biggest challenge is to really get all of your people on board to make this happen. And so that's why we kind of took a step back and presented what we just presented before going into more of the technical details about what we've been doing the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. So that
maybe to add on that is that we are very much interested in your thoughts, because we are a steering committee on airports. Yes. And we collect data from ourselves. We look at, we design or the operational wise, but we are seeking for the information of all other airports or consultants or construction companies. What do they need? What do they think? What do they encounter? So therefore we are happy that we are so many people. So we would invite you to share your thoughts on these kind of ideas. What do you come across in your organization, on your projects? What do you miss? There was a lot of discussions about the life cycle, but also the people who supply all the computer programs. There are a lot of things in stake. You have seen yesterday, for example, the environmental discussion, which is there. That's a huge thing. And this can help us, but it only can help us if we can use it correctly and we share it amongst each other, and that you give your input, that we can bring it in further. So,
Yes.
I'm Kim from Prospect InnoLab in South Korea, and we are a BIM software developer. And in Korea, there is a KAC, Korea Airports Corporation. They are since 2019, they are using IFC. They are trying to develop the IFC digital twin-based facility management system, and they are trying to digitalization of the whole airports. In Korea, there are 14 airports they are managing. So right now in Seoul, there is a Gimpo airport, and they have made digitalized all the buildings, maybe 250 buildings, and it is made by IFC format. And of course, they are using the IFC digital twin, very big digital twin, and based on that, there are recent rental, that kind of things, contract, and also the equipment and electrical things. All things are together involved in the digital twin-based management. So that might be a very good example of what you are trying to do. And I expect this is the first time here in the airport room. I expected there could be some kind of standards or classifications. So when we are developing that system, there is no standardized classification for airport and equipment, things like that. So KAC developed their own standards, and using the IFC, the property sets, they defined all the classifications they need. So if you gave us some time to show our system, maybe it could be hard.
yeah, absolutely. Well, absolutely. It would be perfect if we could team up and they show what they've already learned. I mean, it's open in the sense that we also share the information. That's also something very particular, of course, that we are open in sharing.
Okay.
It's also would be also really interesting because we also model our important facilities already to see how they manage the level of geometry for assets for the facility management. Because we know usually when we are coming from construction stage, we have too much geometric information in the models.
Yeah,
you can't handle this later on, but from time to time you need it to rebuild the buildings as well. So this is a very complex topic actually, but in operation you don't want to have all these information.
Yeah.
So how they deal that is really interesting for us as well.
Yeah, at first we focused on the operation system and operation base. So the BIR 30 or BIR 40 we have defined before digital twin. So we have the standardized way of making models. And also other they call it KAC BIM standards. And so maybe we can share the
Absolutely, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
really great.
Let's just exchange some data
Yeah.
in the coffee break. We can connect together.
Yeah.
Perfect. Hopefully
Thank
there are
you.
more of these kind of things.
By the way, you mentioned coffee break.
Thank
Maybe some of you noticed, since I think 20 minutes or so, this slide is there. We could have a small coffee break.
Well, we have people online. I don't know if there's questions from the
Yes, we
online
should maybe
community.
record it out.
Let me check. No, I haven't seen any question other than the feedback on audio and video. Now everything gets fixed. Again, apologies for that. We're gonna fix it for the next session. Make sure that everyone can see the slides. But no questions so far.
Okay. Are there any other questions for now? Yes?
I have one quick question. I noticed that you guys try to follow the ISO 19650
Yeah.
with all the PIM, and I wanted to just have some information about development of the asset information requirements and how is that process like, because it's still something new and it's a challenge for.
So the ISO 19650, I don't know if you guys, looking at it from a Skipple perspective, we actually used it as a framework for our project phases. So Christoph's slides that was showing the first one that is flexible. That's where we incorporated our ISO 19650 standards. And we actually processed that in a information delivery manual. So people are not directly like looking at this huge document with all of these different requirements, but we actually processed it in a way that would work for all of our stakeholders. And within that same document, we also refer to all of the IFC requirements that we have, or the BIM model requirements. So we kind of like all incorporated it into one document that is needed throughout the whole construction phase. And then at the same time, we are looking at it from an asset management perspective. So we actually are trying to bridge the gap by using those standards that we can have a smooth project handover and process all of the information in our back landscape environments of data. That's from a Skipple perspective, how we are doing it and why we are here discussing the challenges so that I can use that as well for the Skipple processes.
So usually in our airport as well, we implement the ISO 19650 not only about the different stages of a project, also this, I think, primary split in project information model and asset information model. I think this is a basic concept which is really good, but also for the quality gate concept, how we implement different stages for quality management and how the handling of models inside the project is done. There will be some improvements you need to do. For example, what should be handed over with models, not only the checking of the models, but also checking reports and so on. But all of these things already implemented. The problem is actually that a lot of common data environments called ISO 19650 compliant, but they aren't. And for that reason, actually, we are looking for other solutions and also try to think more about the possibilities of OpenCTE, because I think if you really think about the ISO 19650, you need also to think about using OpenCTE to have a better interaction between applications, platforms, but also between platforms. This was something interesting yesterday from Oracle. They said they also think about connecting platforms, or the guy from the construction company told us. But we all know that this is not done from them, or this is not solved from them. We saw this kind of presentations 2019 in pitching as well, and we're asking ourselves 3 years, what's going on with them? Nothing is released, but we need this actually. And now more and more, not that much big companies as Oracle implement this and getting faster and faster. And we're looking for that solutions. And I think it's really, really interesting to work with this kind of technology, because actually this is in my experience, this is usually the biggest spot of problems to upload files, declare files manually, and so on. We talk about optimization, and then we hand over everything with files and not web-based or not web service-based and so on. So I think this is a really important step to do in the next, I think, 1 or 2 years.
So answer your question.
Actually, I was focusing on how you develop because part of the ISO, the most important part actually is having the owner defining what their needs. For example, what kind of systems we want information about and what information we want about the systems. And this is the whole process, the development of this asset information requirement. Yeah. And I wanted to know like how was this done, or if this was done, or.
You mentioned the EIR, for example, that you collect all the different requirements. Actually, more or less, what we are doing here is to produce an EIR for the whole airport world in the world. So actually, we are not trying to make this by our own in every airport, because this doesn't make sense. So we actually collecting, and maybe the problem is that it's so much complexity in behind that you can't produce already the properties. So we start have something like separate subdomains. We identify different regions, for example, the baggage handling system, because no one else has something like this in his facilities. Only airports try to have something like this. And so we isolate the subdomains, then we start identify the entities we need for that. Actually, we also try to merge this with the ISO 4.3 core standards, because there are many new entities we can use for that. And in the next step, we try to identify the really needed properties for that. And this is also project stage related, because we know how much you need for the design and construction, but operation is something completely different. And usually for operation, you don't need so much specific stuff for every entity. This is more common, you know. An airport needs this for everything which is contained in the buildings. So this is the way actually how we try to produce something like a global AIR for the airport code.
Oh yeah.
So this is more regarded to
I was heading to, yeah.
I think that kind of goes back to Cindy's question as well. Like these are kind of how we start those discussions. So looking at different people using different standards, what are they using, how are they using it, and what are their challenges? Because that's what we are doing too. That's why I used the airport, the simple example, because we are using it already, but it's not working how we want it to work. And we come here and discuss it with people from all over the world.
Yeah, the latest presentation this afternoon will show what our future vision is on certain things, but also the subjects which we want to touch on. So it's an open invitation after the coffee break and the other presentations. Be joining us again, I hope.
There is one comment in the chat, actually due to the video delay is probably related to 10 minutes ago, but from Mika saying, yeah, KAC is very interesting. So he's also looking forward to hear more from them.
Yep. Yes, they're very delayed then.
Yeah.
Okay. The next session is on some use cases. So how does Schiphol use open standards within their whole environment? How NACO as a design party needs to meet those requirements with some use cases, and how Vienna Airport is using it. And then the third session is on an update on the airport entities project. So it's a little bit more technical. What have we been doing, working on, why we're doing it, and just an update on where we are today. So that's for the rest of the day. There's no more questions. Thank you very much.
So very quickly for the people inside the room, make sure that all the other rooms are still having presentation till 10:30. So don't hang out in the corridor, just go upstairs for the coffee. For online people, thank you for joining, and see you at 11 for the second part of the session. Thank you.
Thank you.